My son, Marquis Scott. Um, he's the youngest of my 5 boys. Um, he was a big kid. He had a lot of problem with self-image because he was a big round kid growing up. And he actually grew up to be about 6'4", 270 pounds. But he had this great infectious smile. The kid, you could see him coming up the street, like off the school bus about maybe half a block away, you could see his smile. And as he grew more into himself as a young man, he found out he was very funny and people really were attracted to him, especially young children were drawn to him. And he's the type of kid that changed the world in ways that I didn't even know about until sometime after he was gone. But Marquis was my tight guy. We had this saying, we used to say, 2 peas in the pod, always is, always was. We started that when he was very young.
Describe him in one word.
Hugs.
Describe you now in one word.
Resilience.
Let's do that again. Describe yourself in one word.
Resilience.
So, as much or as little as you want, tell us his story.
You know, my son's story starts with me. I grew up in inner city Chicago, housing projects, low socioeconomics, with a mom living with schizophrenia and a dad not there. One of 7 siblings to graduate high school and earn a football scholarship here at Florida A&M University. And through a lot of adversities, was even able to continue and graduate and meet a wonderful girl there. I had seen neighbors. One neighbor had 4 sons and she lost 3 of her 4 sons to gun violence. So the girl I met at Florida A&M, her and I, we had children together, 5 sons, 2 girls. And I never in my lifetime thought I would ever want to raise my sons in Chicago because the likelihood of them reaching adulthood there was slim to none, at least all of them. I never thought that what happened to my son would happen here. My son and I, we grew very, very close because my wife and I had 2 youngest. Our 2 youngest were close. And she decided that, hey, she'll take care of my 2nd youngest too, and I'll take care of my boy. And so it was so funny because he would call me mom. And then when she saw that one day, she said, oh Lord, I have to spend more time with him. And of course she did. He loved basketball. He was a kid, you had to bring his birth certificate because he was so huge when he showed up to Little League and things of that nature. And in fact, I have a chain on my neck with me holding him up by his thighs when he was about 2 years old so he could dunk a basketball. And so no one says they have a favorite kid when you have your parent. But if I be honest, and my other kids couldn't hear this, Marquis was my favorite son. It's my favorite child. On that particular day when Marquis lost his life, we had spent time at the local Salem's Gyros. I had the Philly cheesesteak. He had shrimp, which was his favorite. And he was telling me all these good things about how cool he was and how he had to hang out with his friends because if he didn't, they wouldn't get the attention of girls because he would do all the talking. And then he asked me, he actually said to me, Dad, I'm concerned about my future. And I told him, don't worry about your future because God has a plan for your life. And I had given him a bicycle because he had an appointment that following morning. The appointment was near my mother-in-law's place, so I dropped him there for the evening. I told him to go in, make sure you put the bike up, and tonight make sure you say your prayers. And as I was putting off, he looked at me, he threw the 2 fingers up. He said, always is. I said, always was. And I smiled. And getting close to home, I walked in the door and I'm talking to my wife, and she's talking to me on the phone, and I'm telling her how this kid is just amazing, And I get the phone off and begin to undress to get in the shower. And halfway with my shirt off, I get another call. I grab the phone with my hand stuck in the shirt. And it's my daughter saying, hey, Marquis has been shot. And when you hear that, it doesn't register at first. All of a sudden the world slowed down. It's almost like a movie scene where you could see dust flying, like the dust in the sign from the window is floating down. I say, what? And then next, my wife is back on the phone again. She said, you have to hurry back to the neighborhood. Marquis has been shot. And she said, call Stan, my brother. And I immediately reverted back to when I was a young man, when I used to stutter. And I started stuttering, what? And trying to process it. I got to my truck, pulled my arm through, and I had my keys in my hand that was shaking so profusely that I had to grab it with my left hand to shove the key in. And I got the car going, and I started driving fast as I could, running all lights, and trash is flying, and I'm in this tunnel vision, almost like Larry Fishburne in that one movie when he's the motorcycle guy. And I'm riding, and I remember my wife said, call my brother Stan. So I called my son's uncle, Stan. And he said, they said, hurry up. They're pumping him full of bullets. And all I could hear is this song from Lauren Daigle, I will rescue you. And I'm singing the song over and over in my head. And all I want to do is get in between my son and those bullets. And I didn't make it. By the time I got to the neighborhood, they say, get to the hospital. I get to the hospital and I'm there with my family. There's another family because it could possibly be their Marquis. And by some crazy feeling, we're feeling sad because we're kind of hoping it's their Marquis. How do you do that? And I noticed that after a couple of hours that it appears that all the hospital emergency staff was in the foyer area with us. And I looked around, the other family was gone. And I said, if all of these people are here, who's back there with that kid? And whoever that kid is, he's gone. And he's more likely my son. And we sat in this room. The detective came out and she told me and my family that he didn't make it. And the room erupted and I froze. I froze quietly. And she asked to speak to me, but I saw my wife just disintegrate. She just fell straight to the floor, as kind of like a building when they're doing demolition and they just blow the bottom in it, and she just collapsed like that. And her mother and everybody's grabbing her, and I, as the father who should have protected him, I had not done my job. Talked to the detective. Later on that night, after getting everyone settled, I went back over there where they say he was shot. Police tape was there. It was late at night, 3 a.m., maybe 4. The lights were flashing. They won't let you go past the tape, so I dropped yard to yard. And I looked over, and that bicycle that I had just given him was laying there. Somehow I made it back to my mother-in-law's place where we all slept on her bed. You know how when you go to your grandmother's or your mom's house, for some reason, the bed is always more comfortable than any bed you ever been in. And for some reason, we were all in that bed. And I woke up about maybe 5:36 in the morning. I may have slept an hour or two. And it just erupted out of me screaming, oh my God, my boy. It's like I remembered in the middle of waking up that he was gone. And I went back over to the block, and there were a group of young men standing there. And as I approached them, one young man walked up to me. He was cradling something. And he said, this is all that's left of him. And it was a leaf with my son's blood on it. And I was thinking, this is unfair. You mean they took my son and all I got in exchange was a leaf? All my sons that were in college came home. In the house, when I got ready for work in the morning, about 5, I would hear my wife in the corner crying. I would cut the light on, and she'd be on the floor with his book bag, with his old dirty gym clothes, so she could just spell him and cry. And then a man who had this woman carry this child for 9 months is crying in a way that I have no idea how to fix that or heal that. And so I just stand by her. I just stand there. I can hear later the vibration of wailing outside of my double doors, the glass doors. It's my oldest son leaning against the doors, crying, asking God why. In the shower, my second oldest is in the shower, and I think he's singing and he's in there crying. My little girl can't take a shower by herself without someone being there with her. Her mom has her standing there, she couldn't close the door. And we all slept in the living room for about 6 months. It was like that cartoon where that it's a fire in each windows, and they're putting out this fire and it gets bigger than that window, and all I'm trying to do is put the fires out, and secretly I'm blaming myself because it was my job to protect him.
Do you know who took his life?
Yes, there was some guys he thought of as friends. The guy who actually took his life was a friend of a guy he used to be in my house when they were in middle school. He had went off to school. He came back from school. It was his first time voting, and he got in the car with these kids, and he was gonna get some pot. And the kid that was with his friend shot this other kid, and they thought my son was gonna tell, so they came back and took my son's life.
What happened to the young man that took his life?
That's a great question. I remembered I had just, prior to that, found God, and I told my family, in order for us to get through this, it was going to be love and forgiveness. And at first it was a tough sell, but I said, God said he'll take care of the vengeance for this. And throughout the all playing out, once I was so active in the community, someone sent me a video of about 10 or so cops shooting this car up with about 50 bullets. And this kid, he's filming from inside the store because he's afraid to go out the door, and he's screaming, my brother, and my heart's going out to him. And then I find out a text from the detective said she got to talk to me about a shooting. And the guy that the police shot 38 times was the guy who had murdered my son. One of the bullet casings was underneath his windshield wiper of the car, and that was the car they had used to take my son's life.
What was the date that this happened?
The date my son lost his life, September 17, 2019.
2019 and it's 2024. It's 5 years later. What's different now?
In what aspect? Anything?
Do you feel any different today than you did that day?
About the loss. I have to say, because of my faith in God, I've learned to trust him to take care of the most difficult parts. But you have days where you might be going over the Skyway Bridge and you reach the apex and remember he's gone, and all of a sudden, unwillingly, a roar reaches out, screams out of you, and you cry. You have some days when all of a sudden sadness comes over, and you don't know why, and then you realize it's Tuesday. And see, for us, for about a year straight, every Tuesday was a horror day for us. So today, what's different is we do something about it. We wanted to glorify God, memorialize our son, and bring attention to this gun violence. And I remember I wanted to hurt people, and but I had just got this relationship with my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ with God through him, of course. And how do you go from telling everybody how good God is to wanting to hurt someone? And I had this feeling I was going to write something. So I had a notepad in front of my bed, and this verse comes up, Ezra 10:4, be courageous and basically go out. We're going to be with you, and basically change the world. And I began to write this pledge against gun violence. In essence, it asks people to walk away from situations that may lead to violence. To use your mouth, your heart, and your mind to solve issues rather than any weapons. And I I was the first person that took that pledge. I took it over into St. Pete in the hood, and the first hour, 57 guys signed it. And I said, we have to do something with this, and up to date, we have over 5,000 pledges in the city of St. Pete, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Oakland, San Francisco, Gainesville, and 1,000 in Tampa. To memorialize my son, we created Keys for Life, a nonprofit organization that fights against gun violence. So we started with the pledge. It was the Black St. Pete pledge. We were going into neighborhoods where guys were most likely to use violence to solve conflict. But we realized in order to make a cultural change, we had to not only just go after those who was most likely, but we had to go to the surrounding communities. So we went to a lot of community events and told my son's story. And we came up with a citizen pledge. And at all those community events, we talked about it. But in order to really make a change, it was the young kids we had to get to. We had to plant the seed of personal accountability for the safety of our communities into their hearts and minds at an early age. And so we created 5 keys to end gun violence among young people. I wrote it during lunch breaks, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. And the 5 keys is who's impacted, what role does guns, what role does alcohol and drugs, and the no snitching culture play in the death of so many young people. Why do we remain silent when many kids know who has those guns out there and the impact of how many other people get killed? I know with my son, if someone would have said something, there was a cop got shot and the other man got shot and 2 ladies were killed by the same guys. And if we said something earlier, a lot of people wouldn't be hurt. And the last 2 was how to take a stance by adopting a nonviolent lifestyle and sharing it with your friend. And lastly, when to make a stance. And thereby became the St. Pete Youth Pledge. There's now just the Youth Pledge. And it's throughout our community. And so far we have over 1,300 kids we train with our 5 keys and close to 400 adults. So right now, we try to change the world one person at a time. I remember saying to my son Marquis when he was in middle school, every day I would drop him off, I would say, change the world, son. And he said, okay, Dad. And I said, how you change the world? He said, change yourself. And so we said we're gonna take him everywhere, but he's taken us to far more places than we could ever go, like here today. Young people, I want you to know that when you get upset in the cafeteria because somebody looks at you funny, or someone types something on Facebook, on social media that you don't like, and you get upset about it, and you choose to pick up a gun, it doesn't end with you. There's a whole lot of people that go along with you. You take away a father's hopes and mother's dreams. There were young girls and young boys who their hero was their older brothers or sisters, and you take away their heroes. You take away a family's peace of mind. Many of you go to jail and you get life, and your mama goes there with you, and your father as well, and they get life with you, and you take their peace of mind and their hope as well. You have to understand, no one has the right to ask you to go with them, to do something to someone else, and you don't have the right to risk your family's peace of mind and go with them and to commit violence against someone else. I promise you, there's many people, like 2 guys I heard of, young kids up in Jersey. They were arrested for gun violence. They were drunk and high. When they woke up, they were in the police department, and they never went home, and they didn't even remember who they killed. They didn't even remember what they did. And some people, they'll remember, like the moms and the dads and the little sisters and brothers, they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And we'll never be the same. And neither would you. And neither would you. Hey, son. I miss you so much. I'm sorry I wasn't there to save you. But I know, looking at your smile, you don't want us to be sad. Your mom said you came and visited her the other day and you gave her this big hug and wrapped your arms around her. That made me feel good. Because I told you always don't worry about me, but always protect your mom and you remember to come back to love her. We thank you for that. You know, one of the things I used to tell you was to change the world. Son, my God, you're still changing the world. I'm so proud of the man that you are. I had no idea how many kids you were mentoring. Some of the things the people said. There was a kid named Ryan, he just did a video and he said, when you were in middle school, you befriended him when he had lost somebody. And he said he didn't have any other friends. And he said he came to school just because you was his friend. I did not know that you were doing the things I wanted you to do. So I'm going to honor you with the rest of my life. And me and your family, we're going to continue, and we're not going to let them ever forget you. And we're going to continue changing the world.